We go. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
I guess I can put this right in here now, hey?
Yes.
Okay.
So microplane.
So,
yep. And then the knife.
like that.
And then what you can do is just chop down that little other end part, right? So if you want to pass me what's left in that, I can just break that down for you.
I'm learning all kinds of new tricks today.
Yay!
So this is the part that I
Yes.
never know what to do with.
And I just do this. Awesome. All right. So now we're going to get this into there. Please forgive me for moving over to you. There we go. So our onion, our garlic is now added to our beautiful turkey.
Perfect.
And then you have taken the time to pre-measure all of your ingredients.
Yes.
Which is fantastic. And pre-measuring...
It's just easier that way.
Yes, I'm just saying, when you pre-measure your ingredients, it frees up a lot of time in the kitchen for you to do all the other things that you need to or want to do. Quick question. When your knife is falling, which hand do you catch it with? Neither. It's a knife. Do not ever try to catch a knife if it's falling on the ground. You just let it fall and keep your toes out of the way.
That's right.
I almost lost this one. All right, so what kind of spices are we adding to this lovely
So now
dish?
we're going to add some cumin, some paprika, and some chili powder. There's about half a teaspoon of the paprika and the chili powder and a quarter of the cumin.
Fantastic. Stay tuned, because when we come back, we are going to be putting this all together. And we'll see you after the break.
Ladies and gentlemen, I will endeavor to describe the feeling on this ship.
The American ship is just trailing the Blue Nose.
Angus should never have agreed to this last race. She's too old.
Eddie!
Get to it, man!
Appears there's some kind of difficulty.
Seems to be something loose up there, I believe.
Our topsails foul!
Here's the not exact can't see a man.
Just once more, old girl. And you can rest.
She's holding her lead. Yet again.
Her last race and still undefeated, the Blue Nose out of Lunenburg, Nova Scotia was fastest in the world for almost 20 years.
For 25 years, you've been helping to make our roads safer by doing the right thing. You've been the designated driver, you've stayed over, called home, you've called a cab or a friend, and planned ahead. Let's keep doing the right thing. Support sober driving by getting yourself and your friends home safely.
Do the right thing.
Visit ArriveAlive.org to find out more. Arrive Alive. Drive sober.
Alexander the Great!
I'm gonna stay champion for a long time.
Ryan Ortega!
Volkanovski, you ready or not? I'm coming.
Valentina Shevchenko, the cold-blooded assassin.
She is a killer.
Lauren Murphy, second longest active winning streak in the division.
Nick Diaz has some of the best boxing in MMA and world-class jiu-jitsu.
Ruthless Robbie Lawler.
He wants to take your head off.
Welcome to the war.
Hi, welcome back to Cooking with Corey. I'm your host, Corey. With me is Jen. We are making a fabulous no-bean turkey sweet potato chili. Our onion and garlic and turkey. I'm just telling you, already it smells so fantastic. I'm going to turn off my sweet potatoes that I got going right at the beginning.
Yes.
Because these buttes are already fork tender and ready to rock and roll. So we're going to add our spices that we talked about just before the break.
Yep.
And you said that it was chili powder, cumin,
And paprika and a bay leaf.
and the bay leaf.
The bay leaf can go in once all this goes in.
Awesome.
So we just want to...
Oh, you can use that if you want.
Yep.
The important thing to know about bay leaf is that it is very underrated, but a very necessary flavoring ingredient in anything that you use. You just have to remember to take it out.
Yes.
I've known many people who love bay leaf and they put it in the soup and then they puree the soup. That leaf will never puree down. That and lemongrass, two things you should never, never, never puree or attempt to puree. Oh, that smells so good.
That smells amazing.
Fantastic. Okay.
So now you can add the potatoes.
Our beautiful sweet potatoes. And these, I love it because they just hold their flavor and they're nicely, they're soft but not mush.
Yes.
And again, because this is a chili, this is just going to taste better as we go on, right? So if it doesn't get eaten up all in one sitting, it's the kind of thing that will taste even better the next day, and just we'll call that it can break down.
You can even freeze it if you wanted to.
Amazing.
Right.
All right, and then we've got our diced tomato and crushed tomato or tomato puree.
Yes.
So we're starting for, again, you could buy any kind of just straight up passata. I'm not saying that you should get a tomato sauce for this. I'm saying you should get a passata or any kind of just straight up tomato puree for your chili.
Sure. I'm going to add these in now. Might turn that down a little bit.
Awesome. Yum, yum, yum.
Add those.
Terrific.
And the sauce.
And I'm going to get the cilantro.
Maybe we won't use all that, but...
Amazing. And with this recipe, like you have a family of 3, the recipe is for a family of 4, that's fine. You have a family of, 14, the recipe is for 4. Eyeball it. The thing about cooking instinctually is you're relying on your senses. You're relying on your sense of smell and your sense of taste, and you're tasting, smelling. Little taste, what does it need? Oh, I think it needs a pinch of sugar. Oh, I think it needs a bit of salt. Oh, you know what? I could use a little bit more cumin.
That's right.
I actually want it to be a little spicier. Whatever you decide to do is up to you. And with beautiful dishes like this, the longer it sits, the better it is.
So we're going to stir in that bay leaf, I think.
Now, having said that,
Yep.
my mouth is watering. I have 0 issues with dry mouth because this smells really, really, really good. Chili happens. I am that girl. I'm that girl who loves chili and brisket and wings and
I am too.
Ribs, any kind of hearty, stick to your ribs kind of yummy meal.
Yep.
This is delivering on all levels for me. Because I'm a person who loves beans, but so many times I've asked people if they would make like just a total beanless chili, and if I were, this is the one I think I'm gonna go to.
It's so good. Wait till you try it.
Awesome. So now, because we're not quite finished yet, we're gonna be adding some jalapeno.
Yeah.
And some cilantro.
Cilantro.
Okay.
And then I always like to add a little bit of chili flakes. It just adds a little bit of heat.
Wonderful.
Because I like spice, and a little bit of sour cream just to thicken it up a little bit at the end.
Awesome. And do you like a lot of cilantro or a little cilantro? Medium
Depends
cilantro.
on the day, really. But.
Yeah, I know. We were talking about the fact that cilantro is one of those herbs that I'm guessing, okay, so don't hold me to this, but about 10% of the population feels that it tastes like soap.
Yes.
I was one of those people. And then I learned how to cook with cilantro. And in doing so, I'm going to tell you, it's one of my favorite herbs now. I just love the green, the freshness of it. It adds that, oh, what's that? What is that? Any and every meal, whether it is a Southwestern or Thai or, any kind of dish.
We put it in our tacos.
Absolutely.
We love it.
And I just did like a little soft, I did a kind of a half-hearted chiffonade because you don't want to over chop your greens because then they become really mushy and kind of slimy from the cut. I'm not saying because I'm using a steel blade and it has to be a different kind of blade. I'm just saying overworking it causes it to kind of get meh. So you just want to run your blade through. There we go.
Perfect.
And does that go in now or not until the very?
So
we'll
it's
wait
all at the
till
very
this?
end. Yeah.
Okay.
So this will just need another minute. We'll put it in there, and then we're going to top it off with the cilantro, the jalapenos, and the sour cream.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And the thing about heat, because you were saying that you like to add it at the end.
Yes.
There's a time when you can add heat. Because you can play around with you have an 8-year-old who may not like spice. So if you wanted to make this spicy right from the start and give it that depth of flavor, heat, like that deep heat, the one that you feel here, not just here.
Yeah.
Then when you added your onion and your garlic, add a couple of your chili flakes then and saute it. And what that will do is it will release the oil within the chili.
Yes.
And you can do that also with your spices, which is what you did before. You know, you just had your onion and your turkey in there. Then you add your spices, it releases the oils, away we go. So we only have about 1 minute or 2 minutes left.
Sure.
So if you want, we can spoon that out.
Yep. I'll take the bay leaf out then,
Fantastic.
so we don't forget.
Yes, again, nobody likes to get the bay leaf. I'm going to say it's one of those fun things that we used to say, oh, you got the bay leaf, you get the prize, and then kind of make up something as we go.
Yeah. Turn that
Do you want to use
off.
this?
Sure, I can do that. Yep.
Awesome. Oh, that looks beautiful,
Try
hun.
not to make a huge mess
Oh,
here.
you can make a huge mess. It's okay.
But it's so bright and colorful.
It really
looks really
is.
pretty.
It's beautiful. It's got big, big, bright flavors. You've
Here,
got that beautiful tomato. You've got that sweet potato that adds that subtle sweetness to it.
Yep.
Also gets everything together, bloated with vitamins.
Yes.
Yum, yum, yum.
So now you can just put that on top.
I'll put some in the center.
Yeah.
There we go. And then a little bit around just for color. Lovely.
Nice and bright.
It really is.
We're gonna add just what do you call it, a dollop
A dollop, yep.
of sour cream,
Oh, that's gorgeous.
and then just some jalapenos on top. Just like that.
And that is beautiful.
And that's it.
I'm gonna say, how awesome is it that we got this beautiful, beautiful sweet potato, turkey, beanless chili done in 25 minutes, folks.
So fast.
Awesome. And the little time savers that we learned, like if you have something, you only have 30 minutes, you don't want to have a lot of mess, boom, boom, sweet potatoes are done. You could even do it a day ahead of time. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being on the show, Jen. An
Thank you,
amazing
Corey.
recipe. We'll see you next time on Cooking with Corey.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
It was John's graduation. We were so proud. We all got together for a picnic. That's when we heard coming from the radio. So we stopped and we listened. It helped us get to safety. That's why when I think of John, because now he has a real future to look forward to.
Sports fans know Sundays are for football. That's why you need NFL Sunday tickets. With NFL Sunday Ticket, you'll get every live game, every Sunday afternoon, all season long. Follow your favorite teams and players live in HD. Order NFL Sunday Ticket for only $199.99. Get up to 200 regular season games. Call 1-888-ROGERS-1 today.
You're watching Rogers TV. The opinions expressed in the following programs are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of Rogers nor Rogers TV.
Good evening and welcome to the election 2021, the local results. I'm Jennifer Anderson, joining you here in the Rogers TV studio. Thrilled to be here. I am the executive director of the Georgina Chamber of Commerce, also the host of Mind Your Business here on the channel, and co-host for tonight's election results. Joining me in the studio, and we are thrilled to be here together, although socially distant, is my co-host. She is the host of Politically Speaking here on Rogers TV, Georgina, Karen Wolf. See, we can't even touch.
No, we can't.
No, we are far apart.
But I'm delighted to be here regardless.
Yes.
You know, I always enjoy doing these with you.
Well, and, you know, for you to say that, we have done this many times, and we were trying to figure out...
More than a few, yeah.
More than a few. We have done municipal, provincial, and federal elections together in the studio.
And federal elections, something like, what, three?
Three in the last
2 years?
2.5 years, yeah. So it really has been something that we have been a part of, except a little bit different this year. We're dealing with a global pandemic, so a little bit different. This is one of the first times that folks have been in the studio doing any kind of live coverage. We are very, very bare bones in terms of crew here tonight. It's you and I here.
Yeah, and I mean, we won't even have the guests with us in the studio this time either, which is a little bit different. We're going to have to rely on our Zoom technology, but because of the pandemic, I think we're both kind of used to, you know, conducting interviews over Zoom.
Well, I think so, but I also think, you know, for you, and you know this, coming into the studio on election night, there's always excitement in the studio. There are people here, there are camera crews, there are a lot of people that are coming and going. Candidates are coming and going.
Yes.
We have special guests, and we have them tonight. It's just like you said, it's via phone, it's through Zoom technology, and you don't have that same kind of... You and I are pretty excited.
Yeah. Well, you can't feed off their excitement, can we?
No.
Yes, we'll just have to generate our own.
Yeah, that's right. We're throwing our fun pants on. We're going to have a good time tonight, and we're going to bring the election results to you.
I hope mine fit. Since the last time.
I know. It's been a crazy 18 months. Joining us, not in the studio, but he's actually in the green room, we have our very special analyst who is joining us tonight. Dave Slawsey is here. Dave has a whole list of titles that he has, not only our analyst for the election results tonight, but the former host of Politically Speaking here on the channel, a political pundit, and, you know, if I've ever wanted to know anything about Robert's rules, he's the guy.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yes. Welcome to the local results, Dave.
Hi, Jen. Thanks very much. And hi, Karen, too. It's really good to be back in the studio with real people again to do some recording, except that I'm really socially distant from the two of you outside the room, down the hall, in another room altogether.
Yeah, around the corner.
Yeah. So, Dave, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're going to be doing for us this evening and what you're going to be sharing with our audience?
Sure. Well, while you two are focused primarily on what's coming in from York Simcoe and the riding itself, I'll be looking at what's going on in the rest of the region and trying to update us on the important races that are going on throughout York region and the bordering municipalities, the bordering ridings. As well, I want to take a look at some key ridings across the country, particularly those that feature the party leaders, but also some bellwether ridings that are really split, a complete toss-up, and people predicting that where those toss-up ridings go, maybe the country will follow. So we're going to keep an eye on those as well.
So really, our audience won't have to go anywhere else but Rogers TV Georgina to get all of the election results this evening.
And that's always the case. Never have to go anywhere else.
That's right.
That's right.
Are you excited about the election? Have you been looking forward to tonight and the results, Dave?
I'm interested in following the results and following the patterns. I have to say, though, that I do think that there is a bit of a more malaise or laissez-faire kind of attitude about this election permeating it. It was hard for the candidates, for the parties, to generate the kind of enthusiasm they really wanted to. There's so much restriction operating on them in terms of the COVID protocols that people are having to follow. It was because it wasn't a scheduled election, many parties and riding associations were caught a little bit unprepared, so it was hard to get the momentum going, hard to recruit volunteers, and it's hard to see some of the energy that you normally associate with a very important national election coming out in this kind of climate.
Well, I think, a lot of that probably has to do with the fact that a lot of people didn't feel that we needed this election.
And I think that's been one of the main themes especially of the opposition parties in running this. Why are we bothering with this election in the first place, especially during a pandemic?
Yes.
And I know that theme has been repeated many times by the leader of the New Democratic Party, Jagmeet Singh, as this is a pointless election. If Parliament was working, then why call for an election? Usually you do come to this point when Parliament reaches a stalemate. And that hadn't happened here. So I think I'm going to predict that we're going to see some backlash against the government just for that reason.
Yeah, and I think you're right. But you know, I have seen media coverage of some campaigning that has generated some passion, I guess we could say, probably more frustration than passion. So you know, there is a little different. I've seen a difference actually on the campaign trail this time from previous elections, where people seem to be more angry than I've seen them before. They're certainly frustrated and, you know, have issues with some of the leaders specifically on the campaign trail. I've not seen that before. And, you know, really, I feel a little bit embarrassed as a Canadian to see this behavior during a federal election. So, you know, there are obviously people taking that laissez-faire you were talking about is not 100% across the board.
Yeah.
There are people who are taking it a little more seriously than that.
Yeah, Karen, I thought you were going to start going in a slightly different direction, because I certainly agree with you that there is a lot of passion. And I didn't mean to suggest for one moment there aren't very vital issues being debated in the course of this election. There are certainly significant programs being proposed, and people who have dedicated their lives to these programs wanting to see them come to fruition. And an election gives the opportunity to realize those goals.
Yes.
So there is passion. Yes, there is. I just was talking more about the general climate. Now, what you're referring to, the unfortunate twists and the unfortunate developments in the forms of protests that we've been seeing, I think a lot of people are very, very upset by that. Now, not that protests and demonstrations aren't part of our political process. They certainly are. We've had demonstrations, we've had placard waving, shouting in every election to this date, most often directed towards the incumbent government. But I think you are identifying a real kind of change in tone and an extension of boundaries. Like what's acceptable behavior when we make this protest, when we start throwing things at people. That's those kind of behaviors, the kind of violent anger that you've been exhibited by some of those I want to call them protesters, but they're more than that, because they've been following around the leader in particular, the Liberal leader, Trudeau, to harass him at different locations around. So it's more of an orchestrated. I really fear that some of that isn't just a reflection of the anger and frustration by the COVID virus, but a bit of a fallout from another more insidious virus coming to us from that country to the south of us. We saw a real change in climate in their political process, and it's almost given license or permission to people to take that approach here, which Canadians certainly are not used to and not comfortable with.
No.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something we've never seen before. At least I haven't.
Not to this level.
Yes.
Because, you know, as Dave said, there has certainly always been protests, but not like we've seen over the last few weeks.
And the other thing that is different with this election are the lineups that we're seeing at the polling stations. I mean, I couldn't believe it. Some of them are just, I mean, there are hundreds. There's 100 people in a lineup. I've not seen that before in Georgina, and I'm talking specifically Georgina here. We've never had the lineups that I've seen today at the polling stations.
Right. All right. I want to continue that conversation with you. Thank you, Dave. You have some work that you need to do. You're starting to look at numbers, and certainly as polling stations did close at 7 o'clock Eastern time for the East Coast. I think Newfoundland closed 8:30 their time, so 7 p.m. our time. We're starting to see a few of the national numbers roll in. So we'll come back and talk to you in a little bit, Dave. Thank you so much. he's gone. That was it. He's back to work. But you are right. So as we start to see numbers roll in, we're not necessarily going to see them here. And we watched some news this afternoon. We saw the lineups. We saw on social media, closer to home, people were waiting.
And apparently, people who we just heard recently that anyone who's in the lineup at 9:30 will get to vote, and the lineup might be an hour and a half long. And so while the polls, close at 9:30, anyone who shows up after 9:30 won't get in. They won't be able to start counting until that, that hour-long lineup has gotten through and voted. So we may not see the numbers we were expecting at 9:30.
No, and I'm not sure. So you and I went through this. It was we went through with the last provincial election.
And Bradford.
Yes, and so a polling station was closed. There was an issue there because each of the polling stations need to be open for 12 hours because they had to close one of the schools.
Yes.
There was a delay, and they didn't want to release any of the results until this polling station closed 2 hours after.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm not sure whether some of the polling stations will start to release numbers at 9:30 or shortly thereafter, or whether we are waiting until everybody gets through, or whether there was lineups at every polling station, and therefore it's a moot point.
I don't think there will be lineups at every polling station, but certainly I think we're going to have to wait until everybody gets through in order for that to really close and they start counting. So it'll be a while, I think, before we get the actual results for York Simcoe.
So we here in the studio are waiting for those results. As they come up, we will show them to you on the screen. You will see them all at home. We have an example. You'll see this screen come up throughout the evening as we start to get some results in. Obviously, right now, 119 polling stations, or polls, sorry, not stations. We have 0 results so far, and 0 results for each of the 4 candidates. But over time, we will start to see numbers come up as they become available. We will also show you the different results that are happening, as Dave said, in neighboring ridings, in York Region, as well as the ridings that all of the leaders are running in. So, Karen, if we don't have numbers, we're going to start talking about the Emmys and the Cowboys winning yesterday, and
we'll get RJ's popcorn in here.
That's right. There could be a whole bunch of things that start to come up as we just buy time for numbers to come in.
I called Elections Canada, and I spoke to the media guy there about the lineups, and he was explaining to me that York Simcoe has fewer locations. They have 20 locations, which is less than what they had last time. And one of the reasons they have fewer locations this time is because they lost the schools because of the pandemic. They weren't allowed to go into the schools.
Right.
So you've got fewer locations, but he told me more polls. So obviously, the lineups, just for that reason alone, are going to be longer because you've got more people going to fewer locations.
Right.
So that was the explanation that I got. And I mean, it looks more, again, that because people are 6 feet apart. And so you see a lineup that, has gone around a building because people are social distancing as well.
And I also know, so I voted at the Rock, and so to be able to go in there, you recognize that there's a lineup outside that is socially distanced, and when you got inside, each of the actual tables were, there's 3 or 4 people waiting, so there's a limited number of people that are allowed, and that lineup doesn't extend inside the doors. It has to be outside waiting. So really that perception is there was a long lineup. We did go, I went this morning, I was one of those people that waited. As what was it? I had the numbers here, how many people they were expecting. 30 million, I think, were going to vote today across the country. So, there was a lot of people who waited to vote on election day.
Yes.
We went in the morning, lineup was too long, so I packed a lunch and I went back in the afternoon and was part of the lineup for the afternoon.
Well, I had heard that over 20,000 people in York Simcoe took advantage of the advance polls.
Yes.
And 2,500 people took advantage of the mail-in, which is a lot more. I think someone told me they had 50 last time.
Wow.
And so, you know, the pandemic again, you know, has had an impact on the way that we've been voting this time.
So you are right. That estimate of turnout at the advance polls was 20,947. That was on the Elections Canada website today. And in the last election, only 13,784 people chose to vote in the advance polls.
So, I mean, that's a huge, huge difference.
Yeah. So will we see that increase in the overall numbers who are voting?
That's going to be interesting to really see what the turnout is going to be, and it could be. It could be that what did we have last time? It was
53,700. But at the by-election, we had 16,500.
Well, that's kind of standard, though. I mean,
I know, but that's a huge difference.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's almost 40,000 less for the by-election.
Yes, yeah.
So, but yes, it'll be interesting to see. 53,781 is the amount, and there's about 93,000 eligible voters in the riding.
Yeah, so we're over 50%. Voter turnout. So
yes,
54,
the last one.
I think it was around.
Yeah. So interesting. So York Simcoe is an interesting riding.
Yeah, I mean, it's reinvented itself a few times over the years.
Well, and I think, you know, one of the most interesting things right now, and in talking to whether it's our MP or our MPP, is you're dealing with a riding that has two different regions in it, and especially when you're dealing with a pandemic and you have different zones. York region was predominantly shut down more. They were a hot spot.
Yes.
And so they had a lot more restrictions than other areas, surrounding areas. And when it comes to this riding, you had two very different areas that our politicians were dealing with and trying to navigate through as best they can with their constituents.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the other thing about this and difference in this election is the pandemic and the impact that has had on the campaign trail. I mean, it's pretty difficult to, you know, do the door knocking that you did before and, you know, go face to face with the voter. To talk about issues. You know, you've got a mask on, you're 6 feet apart, and it's just a whole different atmosphere campaigning in a pandemic like this, and completely different.
Yeah, and I think it will be interesting. We have all of the candidates coming on with us tonight, and so it'll be interesting to hear their take for a couple of candidates who have campaigned and a couple who've had to deal with this kind of environment and how they've adapted to getting to know people in this riding when they are limited to that face-to-face and the conversations that they've generally been able to have with people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk York Simcoe. So this is a riding that was last formed in 2004. So it's been a riding several times, 3 times according to Wikipedia, so you know it has to be true. It's been represented in the House of Commons from 1968 to 1979, from 1988 to 1997, and since 2004. So since 2004, it was known as York Simcoe, although we had a discussion, and I never want to have a political discussion with you because I know I'm going to lose.
Oh, come on.
You know, and you said the riding and the boundaries changed in 2011.
Yeah. It was a huge riding prior to that, and a lot more, obviously, voters. And, you know, it's the population grows, they will do that from time to time, take a look at the boundaries, and in our case, they reduced it. We used to go up to Innisfil at one time, and now we go no further north than Bradford, so on that side of the lake. So it's reduced the number of potential voters. We're at 109,000 voters here in New York Simcoe now.
We're at 93.
Oh, sorry, 93.
Yes, 93.
Yes,
104,000 is the population.
Yes, that's right, and 93,000 eligible voters. So it would reduce quite a bit. So it's a little bit easier for the candidates to campaign. You know, when Peter Van Loan was campaigning back in 2004, right up until 2011, you know, he was doing some running to get from one end of it to the other.
Yes. Speaking of Peter Van Loan, I believe we are going to have him in just a few minutes. We're going to be able to talk to him.
Oh, great. Good.
His ears are burning as you're talking about him. But yes, it has to be difficult, and maybe that's a question for Peter.
Yeah.
Has to be difficult when you're dealing with thousands and thousands of constituents, but now you have that diverse riding, you have even more.
And geographically so large.
Yes. Yeah. And that's something we haven't talked about. You look at other ridings that are more urban or more central. We see that just with Georgina and how diverse Georgina is, and traveling from one end of the municipality to the other takes time.
Absolutely, half an hour.
Yeah. So now you add a few different areas to that, and you really have geographically a significant riding.
Sure. Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So Peter is getting his mic on, so we're going to be able to talk to him. We have lots of guests who are joining us tonight. We have the mayor who's coming up later in the show. We also have the 4 candidates who are in this riding. I know, so candidates had to register before August 30th. And I had heard rumblings when we were doing debates and we were starting to get candidates in. There was a Green Party candidate that was being mentioned, although never on the official website. But there was a few different parties that I was hearing rumblings of, and as of August 30th, we did have only 4 candidates.
That's right. I was very surprised that there wasn't a Green candidate in our riding. I know that, and I'm speaking about Georgina specifically, the environment is a big issue here. And I was really surprised that we didn't have a Green candidate.
Yeah.
We always have had one in the past.
And there was although it was unofficial, when I was watching some newscasts, when I was watching some of the media talk to some of the candidates who were throwing their hat in the ring, there was a Green Party representative that was listed in some of these articles. So it was interesting to see. We met all of the candidates, the 4 candidates. We did a debate with them on September 9th. So it was nice to be able to ask them the important questions and hear some of their answers.
Yeah, actually, I think they all did very well. I mean, we had to do it by Zoom, and that was almost a last-minute decision by Rogers to go from in-person to Zoom. And so I know that, everybody was kind of running around and trying to make that happen and have a debate that, would provide the information to our voters here in Georgina so they could make an informed decision today.
Absolutely.
Or in the advance poll, for sure.
All right, so our next guest needs no introduction, but I am going to give you one anyway. Peter Van Loan served as a York Simcoe MP from 2004 to 2018. He was the government House Leader from 2007 to 2008, and again from 2011 to 2015. On July 29th of 2018, Peter announced that he would be retiring from politics. He retired from the House of Commons on September 30th, and that's when incumbent Scott Davidson took over the seat in a by-election, and that was in the spring of 2019. Peter, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the Local Results.
Well, it's great to be with you.
It's nice to have you here. It's nice to hear a little bit of insight in what you have to say about this election.
Well, I'm happy to offer some insight, and it's, of course, great to even talk to people in Georgina since we've had a year and a half when you can hardly talk to anybody these days. So it's great to be out in this fashion. But It's an interesting election. I think we're looking probably very much at a stand-pat result, both here in York-Simcoe and across the country to a large degree. So we'll have to wait to see how it unfolds. The Conservatives made a few gains in Atlantic Canada, which a couple of them were friends of mine. I was quite pleased to see those results. So it was a good start for them, but I think the challenges are going to be greater. One of the phenomena that we did see beginning to take hold here in York-Simcoe, and I think it was elsewhere that's of concern to Conservatives like me, is this issue of the vote going off to the People's Party of Canada, that kind of vote splitting. And if you recall, my entry into not into politics, but into elected politics came on the heels of a lot of work I did trying to establish the new Conservative Party, working in the PC Party for that, to put an end to a division that we had on the right with the Reform Party and the Conservatives into two different groups, trying to bring that family back together. And we're beginning to see a bit of that cleavage developing again, and that's a little bit troubling, I think, for Conservatives.
So, Peter, you have been through election nights, many of them. You've felt the butterflies. Is it good to not have that same butterfly feeling, that anxiety, that thing tonight, and just be able to watch, or do you miss the excitement of being a part of this election and throwing your hat in the ring?
Well, it's not my name on a ballot, but every election since 2012, I've been out working in the election, pulling vote. So I get these butterflies and this excitement, even when it's an election in the States or in Prince Edward Island or in Nova Scotia or in Alberta or something like that. I'm sitting there glued to the television till the wee hours, watching the close, tight seats. And when you've been involved as long as I have, I've been president of the provincial PC party, the federal PC party. You know folks all across this country. So you actually know the ridings and you know the contests that are taking place. So it makes it, for a person who's as unusual as I am, this isn't what normal people are interested in, but it's very exciting. So the butterflies are always there. But yeah, it's a little less pressure when it's not your name on the ballot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You actually mentioned wee hours. Is that a prediction?
I think that's going to be the case tonight, and it may even go beyond that. With I don't know that there was a lot of mail-in ballot. Our process in Canada, we've got a lot of, I think people are quite comfortable with advanced polls and the way they work, and certainly we always have very big turnouts here in York-Simcoe in the advanced poll, and I think this year was no exception. I know there were a lot of problems today that I heard about at the polling stations with lineups here in Georgina, here at the Ice Palace, at the Presbyterian Church just down the road in Keswick. There are a lot of spots where people are waiting an hour or 2 hours to vote, which is a little bit discouraging. It's encouraging that people are, that determined and willing to keep trying that hard, but that might depress the turnout a bit here and across the country, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. If you drive out to your polling station and you find out that it's going to be a 2-hour wait, just how committed will you be to stand in line for 2 hours, especially when it's not something you're used to doing here?
Yeah, and though I do find that folks in York-Simcoe who vote, and we're always usually just a little bit below the national average, but people who vote here really do care. And that's why you were getting people waiting 2 hours. And I'm impressed by that commitment. I just hope we can find a way to, it's harder and harder to get people to do these jobs as election officials and so on. I hope we find a way to make this, get more people to take up that cause and do that kind of work and contribute to their community that way. It's not just for the money, but it's part of making our system and our democracy work.
Now, would you be willing to make a prediction here?
Well, I'm pretty optimistic that Scott Davidson's going to be reelected. The Liberal competition didn't show up until a week and a half in after she lost a nomination in Brampton, and I gather she's originally from Guelph. I don't think there are very many ties here. And the Green Party didn't have a candidate, the New Democrats from Barrie, so I think Scott's the only one who's really been working it hard and running any kind of a campaign. Nationally, I would like to hope that the Conservatives will make gains. I think we're going to see something pretty similar to what we had before. I think if Trudeau gets into a reduced minority position, he's going to be in trouble. If Aaron O'Toole ends up with more seats than him, I think it's lights out for Justin Trudeau. But I think Aaron O'Toole has some challenges if he doesn't win. He's made this effort to bring the party to the moderate center, which is always, I said, has opened up that flank for the People's Party. And there are folks within the party who aren't happy. So he's going to have to work hard to hang on to his leadership if he doesn't win.
Yeah, and I mean, if we do end up in the same position that we were in when we started, what do you see in 18 months?
Well, I look back at times when we've had this sort of happen in 1975, Bill Davis won a minority. 2 years later, tried to win a majority. It was another minority. Guess what? That one lasted 4 years. And that's, the same thing happened with 75 and 76, federally once. So I think that the leaders will probably get a message unless there's some compelling issue on the national stage that makes folks want an election. It will probably, as this one was, pretty stable. Like Justin Trudeau could have been there for 4 years quite easily. The nature of the opposition was that it was divided. And each of the Bloc, the Conservatives, or the NDP had the balance of power. So all the Liberals had to do was get one of them lined up on a vote, and they needed all of them against them if they were going to lose a confidence vote. And there aren't very many issues where you're going to get the Conservatives, the New Democrats, and the Bloc agreeing against the Liberals, other than kind of corruption kind of issues. So for that reason, I think you're probably, if it's a Liberal minority, probably still pretty stable. If it's a Conservative minority, all bets are off.
Peter, just before we began talking to you, we were talking a little bit about the debate that we held, and we asked the public 4 questions, and there were certainly hot topics that the public put in, submitted. What do you see as being a top priority for York Simcoe right now?
Well, it's harder for me to feel the pulse. Like I said, I go shopping at Walmart, talk to a few people, but it's not the same as going to all the kind of community events. And this has been a real factor, and I think hurting our democracy. These lockdowns have made it harder to keep a pulse for all politicians, for the media, for everyone. And it tends to be a few talking heads in the media dominate the message. But to the extent I see it, there's a lot of concern about the impact of all these COVID lockdown measures, what that's done to people's small businesses, their abilities to survive. This is a big issue here in this riding. So their personal economic well-being is an issue, and housing affordability is a huge, huge issue. The fact is they're just, we're bringing in 400,000 new people to Canada every year. Half of them come to the Greater Golden Horseshoe, and we're building houses that can accommodate about a third of them. So the result is we have a massive shortfall of supply compared with demand. And what is the result? Housing prices through the roof. So young families, people who are aspirational, and we've got a lot of folks now in this community that have kids that are, off of school, going into the workforce, wanting to start life on their own. And they're really, really challenged trying to find a place to have a home and live with their kids. And, they grew up in a community like this. They don't want to live in an apartment in downtown Toronto. They want the same kind of lifestyle for their kids that they were able to enjoy. So I look at those 2 issues, and there wasn't a lot of talk about housing before. In this election, you saw all the major parties get out there on the issue. They obviously were discovering something in the polling and in the focus groups they did. I think you're going to see in the provincial election next year, that's going to be a big issue.
Yeah, I agree completely.
Yeah. Yep. Peter, thank you so much for joining us. We are thrilled to have you here in the studio with us, although very distant in a different room. If we are still on the air in 4 or 5 hours, we will give you a call and you can come back in. How's that?
All right. No problem. Well, great to be with you and great to talk with the people of Georgina through this fantastic medium. And thank you for the great work you do. Community television is something that's kind of disappearing everywhere, and it's great to still have it here in this community where we really don't have a lot of other good media alternatives. So thanks for your great work.
Well, thank you, Peter.
Yeah, it was nice talking to you. Have a good night. All right, as we continue with the election results, we are still waiting for some of the numbers to come in, any of the numbers to come in this riding, but we're starting to see, as polls close across the country, we're starting to see that trickle effect of results coming in.
So we'll have to bring Dave back in pretty soon.
Yes, to give us an update. Yep. Absolutely. We'll get everything situated out there. We are also going to, throughout the course of the evening, talk to each of the 4 candidates. We'll talk to the mayor, we'll talk to each other, and we'll also identify some of those results, not only for here, but in other ridings.
And I think we have other guests coming in too. Mike Anderson, I think, is going to be with us.
Yes, and that's such a different, so Mike is the editor and publisher of the Georgina Post, and so it'll be nice to hear his perspective of what he's been seeing media-wise throughout the course of this campaign. Campaign was 36 days. 36 days long.
Yeah.
So,
and I think that's another reason, Peter was talking about, the laissez-faire attitude of the voter, and I think that has something to do with it. We didn't see a lot of signage, which is, something that every election I've ever been through, there's a mass of signage everywhere, and I was hard pressed to see, some of the other parties just didn't have signs anywhere in the area that I come from. So
yeah, and I just think, with only 36 days for campaigning, it really is a whirlwind, right? For some people, it was an absolute whirlwind. For other people, and I'm sure the candidates, it could go either way for them. It's either it flew by or they couldn't wait to get to this day. It seemed like forever. It's like waiting for your favorite show, waiting for, the fourth season of Yellowstone to finally come into play, right? And so it's like you're waiting and waiting. And so it's been difficult for people with only 36 days.
Yeah, and I guess that was part of the strategy, the party strategy of the Liberals to say we're going to have an election and it's only going to be 36 days long. I sense that they must have thought that was going to be an advantage for them, and I think we have to wait to see whether or not that part of their strategy plays out in this election.
Yeah. Okay, before we go any further, and we are still, for everybody who's tuned in, we are still waiting for the election results to start coming in. We know polls closed in this area at 9:30. However, anybody who was in the line at 9:30, we were told would be allowed to vote. So we've been hearing throughout the day that rumors of, half an hour, an hour and a half at different polling stations. So we might be waiting a little bit longer than we originally thought to get some results in.
This is kind of deja vu for us, isn't it?
It is. It's a deja vu that I never wanted to go through again, because that was a really, really long evening and long wait for the provincial results at the last election. Joining us now, we have the Mayor of Georgina, Margaret Quirk. So welcome, Mayor. It's nice to have you joining us.
Thank you very much, and I have to chuckle too. I remember your last provincial election, and I know you were desperately trying to find topics to fill the time while the results came in. Let's hope it's not quite as long tonight.
Yeah, we have our fingers crossed. It's not going to be quite as long. But we were just talking to Peter Van Loan, and we asked him about the butterflies, and you know a thing or two about election nights and the butterflies and the anxiousness as you wait for those numbers to roll in. Oh, yes, and it's something that you can only experience if you're experiencing it. It can be a very long day because it's usually a long campaign, and as you said earlier, this was 36 days, but it's a lot of time and effort and work went into those 36 days, and so now it's sitting and waiting for those results, and it can be rather anxious times. Yes.
Yes. So, Margaret, I wonder if you could, spend a few minutes and tell our viewers a little bit about when a mayor of a municipality would really need the support of an MP.
Well, certainly there's a lot of issues that we at the local level aren't in control of. We're a creature of the province, and the province is a creature of the federation, which is Canada. So a lot of things are beyond our control. And from a federal point of view, there's a lot of policies and programs, and one of the things that certainly comes to mind first and foremost is Lake Simcoe and the funding that we're all wanting to see get reinstated to fund the cleanup of Lake Simcoe. So that's one of the biggest issues that we deal with. But it's funny, during the pandemic and many other times, I get many calls and questions and emails about issues that aren't municipal, but people know they can reach me maybe a little easier at times, or they reach out to our offices for those answers of provincial and federal questions. So we have a very strong relationship with both our MP and our MPP for day-to-day questions on issues, and then the bigger issues that are federally mandated. And as I say, the one that comes to mind for all of us here in Georgina is Lake Simcoe and cleanup funds.
Yeah, and I think some of that is maybe people being a little naive to knowing. They don't necessarily know what is a municipal issue versus provincial versus federal, and so they reach out to you.
Issue. I mean, trust me, as a candidate knocking on doors since 1994, it's almost local government 101 when you go to doors. And people have valid questions and concerns. And they want to know, answers to those questions. Some of them may not be municipal, but we endeavor to try to connect them to the right agency or department and get those answers for them. And people just, they don't know what's a regional road compared to a local road, compared to a provincial highway. It's a road they drive on. They want it safe. They want it in good condition. They want the snow cleared. They don't really care who's taking care of it, because as we all know, there's only one taxpayer. So it's their tax dollars at work, whether it's federal, provincial, local, or school board level.
Right.
Yeah, and I think, there's a sense that if people come to you and it happens to be a provincial issue or a federal issue, that, you may lobby those particular levels of government on their behalf for whatever the issue might be.
Yeah, and I know we've had, again, through the pandemic, many questions that have come up. I've had questions about, the business recovery programs provincially and federally, the issues of tax relief, the wage assistance programs, all those things that are, a lot of them are obviously above what we do here municipally, but our staff have endeavored to assist. And I've, reached out to our MP and our MPP on those issues. And we're fortunate here. We have a really strong relationship with both our local representatives. Certainly Scott is a hometown boy, and his heart and soul is Georgina, and he certainly has advocated for us on many issues, as you both know. So, but I've always said I'll work with whoever is elected by the constituents in Georgina, and in this case in York Simcoe. I'll work with, and that's something that I don't get into party politics at the council table, and we work with whoever is there and ensure that we get the job done together.
Yeah, it is a little bit nicer when the candidate is from your hometown, though. He really understands the issues a little bit more.
Yeah, and it's nice. I've known Scott for a number of years, not as long as maybe yourself, Karen, but it is nice to have that rapport, and he's certainly quite familiar with the issues here in Georgina and in all of York Simcoe, for that matter. Unfortunately, I didn't get to meet the other candidates in this election, but I'm sure if I had, I would have found them to be very interested in the issues here and wanting to do a good job. And as I said, I'll work with whoever York Simcoe decides to put into Ottawa for this election as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, when we did the debate, the other candidates, very interested, obviously, in York Simcoe and Georgina, because it was the Rogers Georgina that was interviewing them. But, they were,
Yeah, anybody that will put their name forward, it's a big step. It's something you're putting yourself out there. You're learning the issues. You're talking to residents to find out what their concerns are, and you're wanting to do the best that you can to address those. So my hat's off to all the candidates during this election and that put their name forward for any campaign. It's a big decision, and it's something that a lot of people should experience firsthand. I think you'd really learn a lot doing a campaign and knocking on doors and finding out what people really are concerned about and what their issues are. It can be quite eye-opening.
All right, Mayor, I'm going to be a little cheeky. Any predictions that you want to give, or?
Well, you know what? This riding is pretty solidly conservative the last number of years. It has been liberal federally, and it has been NDP provincially. So anything can happen. It's what the voters want to put in. If I was going to predict, I would probably predict that Scott will get back in. But the only poll, as we know, that matters is the one that happened today and that just closed a few minutes ago. And I know I've seen some videos of the lineups around, Georgina and in many other areas. The pandemic has changed the numbers that can go into the polling station. My wait today was, 15 minutes, but others have been much longer. But I think it shows that people want to exercise their right to vote. They want to get out and vote. I encourage people to do that, and we'll see what will happen in the next little while. But I would think that we're going to see MP Scott Davidson reelected. That would be my prediction, but anything's possible on election day.
Very good. Thank you so much.
No problem. Have a good evening. I hope the results come in quickly for you.
Yes, keep your fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Okay, take care. Have a good night, you two.
Thanks for being with us.
Bye-bye.
So, we're starting to see now. So we are seeing some of the results that are coming in, not necessarily in our riding, but we're starting, like Newmarket Aurora, 2 polls have given their results out of 182. So it is a long way to go, but we're starting to see those numbers as they come in.
It's encouraging to know that they're counting.
Yeah, yes, that they are busy, that they are doing their job and they are counting numbers and counting ballots, and so we'll start to see those results. We do have Mike Anderson on the phone.
Oh, okay.
So let's bring Mike into the conversation. Mike is the editor and the publisher of the Georgina Post. Mike, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi.
Hi, it's great to have you here. Or
it's great
via
to be
Zoom, I guess.
Yes.
It looks, where are you?
Technology out. Apologize.
Where are you, Mike?
We're at the Sutton Legion. Scott Davidson's celebration here. It hasn't happened yet,
but you are at the Legion.
That's right.
So let's talk, first of all, let's talk about your role at the Georgina Post. You are a part of the media, and so you are out and about, obviously, tonight for election night, getting some information, but you have been out during the campaign as well.
That's right. On Saturday, I followed Benjamin Jenkins, door knocking in Keswick, and so that was a very interesting experience. I don't know if I have the gumption to do that. He was bitten by a dog, not when I was there, and received some verbal abuse apparently. But actually, most of the people that he talked to were pretty receptive.
And what were
that was nice
what were some of their issues that you?
Well, he was toting the NDP platform, which was really emphasis on pharmacare and NDP platform issues. There was some mention of gun control, housing affordability, basically those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
But,
and that's what the voter was wanting to find out about, were those issues?
Yeah.
Were you surprised at the interactions? I mean, it's difficult right now. I would assume that it's very difficult being out on the campaign trail and talking to people.
It's a strange thing because, I mean, you're approaching people's homes. And, there was one situation where, a landlord tried to deny him access. And apparently electoral rules allow access to renters. And, you can't prohibit a candidate from door knocking, essentially. But when he did talk to people, you had to keep the distance. It wasn't exactly the same sort of feeling as a regular election.
Yeah. What have your feelings been throughout this? Because it really, we were talking 36 days of campaigning. Have you seen anything significant in our riding? Anything stood out for you other than, you know, being on the campaign trail, but anything of interest that has changed over this campaign?
Well, you know, I think there's a high degree of cynicism. You know, I went to I voted today at the Rock, and I spoke to some people who had voted, and quite a few of them told me that they thought this election was really unnecessary in the middle of a pandemic. And they were, you know, frustrated, but they were voting. You know, they were exercising their right.
Do you expect that, you know, that sentiment is going to have an impact on the voter turnout at all? Are you expecting it's going to be?
It's hard to say. You know, it's hard to say. I mean, you know, it may take several days before we get a real full picture of what exactly has happened. But, you know, these people had these sentiments, but they were in line and willing to vote. So hopefully it doesn't impact voter turnout.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what it will be.
We'll see. I mean, I'm not.
And whether or not it's that or the pandemic, I mean, there's a couple of factors that might have influenced voter turnout when we learn what it is. I mean, for all we know, it could be higher because I've heard that, you know, more people than ever before have voted with mail-in ballots, and more people than ever before, certainly in this riding, have voted in advance polls. So it could be, you know, it's higher.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. You know, it's just, I don't think there was a sort of a key wedge issue that would force people to get out in droves. You know, I think, you know, you'd think there would be, but it was a snap election. There was a lot of back and forth from some of the candidates, a lot of rhetoric. And found that, you know, watching the all candidates debate, that there were a lot of issues that were just sort of touched upon, but not really threshed out.
Yeah. That's interesting, because I think the pandemic is the major issue, and there's a little bit of a ripple effect with that in terms of, you know, some people may be voting because of their take on vaccinations or vaccine policies, or affordability becomes a key issue during this time, housing and you know, jobs, and also dealing with being in a deficit, a huge deficit, and all of that kind of comes back to us being a part of this pandemic.
Has
Very true.
I guess the question is,
you know,
has 36 days been long enough for them to, you know, sit down and really think about all of those things and
you
just
know,
what
like, for
they're
instance,
going
I'll give you
to
an
want to do about it?
example.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like climate change, you know, which everybody touts as a major issue. You know, I try to sit down and figure out all the different carbon pricing policies, and it's very confusing, you know. So I think, you know, when you're talking to the electorate, you have to sort of, I'm not saying dumb it down, but you have to make it, you know, it has to be an elevator pitch,
yeah,
essentially. And I think climate change is such a complex issue that, you know, in 36 days, can we really deal with it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mike. I think a lot of the messaging by a lot of the candidates has been, you know, very short and sweet, and really don't go into any depth at all about, you know, what exactly their party is offering and what, you know, it's going to cost people. Like, basically, if you want to go dig down and into the issues or into, you know, what they're promising, you pretty well have to, you know, get out their book and read it line by line, which I don't know how many people have done. So
not too many people are going to do that.
Yeah, exactly. I think they've been pretty light on, they haven't had time really to go into it in any great depth, I don't think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mike, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much for being here with us. We really
No worries.
appreciate you being here. And it's interesting, you know.
I just wanted to make one point, because you made an excellent point there. And, you know, one of the sort of stories of this riding, I think, and also across Canada, is to see how the People's Party of Canada, how much support it has. And certainly, you know, that's what I'll be looking at. I mean, they got 1.6% of the vote in York Simcoe last time around. I mean, are they going to get 6%? Are they going to get 7%? That's going to be a very interesting side note to this election.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's an issue there that, you know, some people have an issue with the vaccine policies, and they see the PPC as the party that are most in line with their thought process around vaccines. And I think that you will probably see a few more votes for the PPC in this election because of that.
So, Mike, you are going to obviously have some stories, some editorial content on your website in the next day or two as results and information becomes available, and then the next edition comes out on the 24th. Correct?
That's correct.
Excellent. Yes. So we'll be able to see all of the updates that you have for us.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for being with us, Mike.
Okay.
Have a good night.
You too.
You know, it's interesting, and Mike was at the Legion, very different than other years at campaign headquarters and parties and things that are happening. They're very limited. Yeah. I even saw with some of the leaders, you know, when you only have, I know, was watching the news before coming to the studio tonight, and with Justin Trudeau, very different landscape. He's having his celebrations at the same place that he did at the last election. And there's only 250 people allowed this time around because of COVID. So majority of those people are media and security and people like that, not constituents, not you know, celebrations or in to hear speeches of whatever kind. So
the world has changed.
It's interesting.
The world has changed. You know, this pandemic has just had wide impact across every facet of our lives.
Yeah. So as we wait for results to come in to York Simcoe, we have Dave, who is taking a look at not only at our riding, but surrounding ridings and ridings across the country. Dave, how's it going? Do you have some numbers coming in?
Well, the numbers are starting to come in very slowly right now. We'll make a comment. The numbers that you're seeing on your screen right now, take a look just at the top line, the elected, because those are mostly reflecting the Atlantic province's results. They closed ahead of time and started counting ahead. So what we're seeing here is probably really disappointing for the Liberal Party, because they had hoped not only to hold on to the strength they had there, but wanted to make more significant gains. Now, with an overall average voter result of 40%, that's much lower than they had anticipated and had hoped for. And that was where they were supposed to score large numbers. Now, if they're only getting the 40%, the Atlantic provinces, that doesn't really bode so well for their fortunes across the rest of the country. As Peter had alluded to earlier, the Conservatives did pick up a couple seats, it looks like, in the Atlantic provinces, so closing that gap a little bit. The other numbers we're seeing now, I'm going to reserve judgment because a lot of those are based on one or two polls. I know one of the results is leading with the fact that people had one vote as opposed to no votes for everybody else. It was a very small poll, obviously. Others are going with one or two results. I want to make a comment, though, on what something Karen just mentioned, again, with regard to the People's Party, because before Peter Van Loan left, I did have a small conversation with him. It's interesting to see that, and I agree with Karen, that Maxime Bernier, and the leader of the People's Party, has definitely made a clear effort to have his party identified with the vaccine-resistant, the COVID doubters group. In fact, he made a press release today announcing to their supporters that they could show up at polls without masks and demand to vote. So it's a very, very strong position he's taken. We were asking about why was he doing that, and perhaps the goal in the long run is to try to position the party strong enough to do a reuniting with the conservative splinter group. We'll see how they do to see if that kind of strategy worked. Why don't we come back? Let's go back to you for a while, Jen, and then we'll come back and want to take a look at some of the Quebec results coming in, particularly the leaders in Quebec.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And as we continue to scroll through these areas, we're starting to see some of the ridings in York Region or our surrounding areas start to release some numbers. Still a 0 for York Simcoe, but we're hoping to see some of those numbers soon. Want to mention there's a couple of areas that haven't been acclaimed yet, or sorry, not acclaimed, that haven't been, like, for example, as you're seeing on the screen here, the incumbent, there is a check mark saying that she has taken the riding. That's not the case. So we're getting that bug fixed, just so folks are aware that that check mark shouldn't be on there. No, not with one polling station of 178. We're not calling it just yet. So that bug we are fixing. So
perhaps the check mark is for the incumbent, is it? Just to
well,
identify that
it will start to identify who they have called. So what we're going to do now is we wait for some of those numbers. We are going to head to a break, but please stick around with us. There are still a lot more, not only guests, but information, results that will be coming in, and we will have all of the results for you right here at Rogers TV. Georgina, stick around. There's still more to come on Election 2021, the local results. Welcome back to the election 2021, the local results. I'm Jennifer Anderson, co-hosting this evening as we bring the election results to you from not only York Simcoe riding, but right across the country, and those ridings of interest to us here in York Simcoe. I am joined here in the studio with Karen Wolf. She is my co-host and the host of Politically Speaking right here on Rogers TV, Georgina, and we are thrilled to be getting some results
yes,
in.
we are. Yes, it's encouraging, isn't it?
Yes,
we might be home before 2.
Oh, it's a little bit of deja vu for us,
Yes,
and
yeah.
we don't like to talk about the provincial election that we went to that was that was hours and hours long in order to get results. So, but we know polling stations were busy. There were lineups. They were allowing anybody who was in the lineup as of 9:30 when they closed to be able to vote. And so now we are starting to see those results. We're going to put the screen up for you. I think when we last saw it, it was only one polling station so far of
there's a few
119.
More. There is a few more.
So we're just going to wait for that to come up for York Simcoe, but we're starting to see some of those numbers come in for the 4 candidates, and a little bit of insight into the results here.
Yes, so there's 2.
2 of 119, but we can see those numbers starting to unfold, and we certainly know that numbers change as the polls come in and as more polls are giving results. All right, so we are taking a look at York Simcoe, but as everybody knows at home who's been following along with us tonight, we have Dave Slawsey in the green room, and he is taking a look at some of the other ridings that are of interest to York Simcoe constituents. Dave, what's going on with some of the other ridings?
Well, let's take a look first at the other York Region ridings, okay, Jen? Sure. If we take a look at Aurora Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill, now there's a very interesting race going on there because the incumbent, Leona Asilev, actually ran as a Liberal in 2015 and won as a Liberal, then crossed the floor to the Conservative Party. Just scroll back there for a second, so she is now following the Liberal, Lee Taylor Roy, in that race there, which is very interesting. The Liberal brand is carrying the day more than the incumbency. Looking at King Vaughan as well, Deb Schuch now is the Liberal, has represented that riding since 2015. If we got rolling up there.
Yep, we're starting to get those pages in. There you go.
And Deb is still leading. She, once again, as I said, she's the incumbent. And she's been Canada's Minister of Seniors since 2019. She's a former York Regional Councillor in Vaughan. Her closest challenger there, who they were less than 1,000 votes apart last election in 2019. She's a former person in the banking financial industry working with seniors issues too. So that's going to remain a very, very close race throughout the night. Liberals hoping to stay on with it. Now in Markham-Stouffville, once again, it's a Liberal-held riding currently by Dr. Helena Jazik. There we go. And she's still maintaining the lead on that one, too. The closest rival there is the Conservative Party. Ben Smith was only 21 years old. If he were to win, he would become one of the younger MPs in Canadian history. He is worked as a broadcaster with Rogers TV. Markham-Stouffville. Now, Markham Thornhill, pardon me. Looking at that one there, the Liberal Mary Ng is the incumbent, and she won the April 2017 by-election with over 50% of the vote. Probably going to maintain that range too, because predictions keep her in that range there. We got there he is, and you see the results with 20 polls reporting. She's close to tripling the closest challenger there. Markham Unionville. There's one that's interesting for us because it's gone back and forth. The Liberals have had it for a while, then the Conservatives took it back after the 2011 election and held it ever since with Bob Soroya. Now, we see what's happening right now with 19 polls. Challenger Paul Chang is moving ahead. Now, this represents a really important thing in York Region and the 905 in general, because the Conservatives and their leader put a lot of stock in trying to win seats in the 905. If they were going to challenge the Liberals at all for government, they saw the 905 as a key battleground area. And conversely, the Liberals saw that necessity of maintaining their seats that they held there. They had good control over the 905 and seeming so far tonight to hold on to it. Newmarket Aurora. Let's look down close, where the Liberal incumbent is longtime mayor of Newmarket, Tony Van Bynen, and he's still maintaining a lead over former deputy mayor of Aurora, Harold Kim. Now, that's only 11 polls closing. That was also a very close vote, well, 2,000 votes in 2019. But Tony's well known within that community. Looking at Richmond Hill.
Dave,
very close riding.
Dave, as we bring up Richmond Hill, I just want to remind everybody that we are having a bit of an issue with those check marks. So we just want to make sure, typically the check mark is where they have announced a winner unofficially, but they've announced it, and that's not the case for these areas. Numbers are beginning to roll in, but we are talking to Master Control. We are trying to get those check marks removed until we can officially call those areas, or unofficially in some cases. But just wanted to let everybody know that Richmond Hill is not on this now on the screen. So, Dave, please continue with your analysis.
Oh, that's good. Thank you. Yeah, no, that's an important point to see. With Richmond Hill now, about a quarter of the results of the polls, rather, have been returned. And that's not a great separation between the leader, Majid Jawari, and the challenger, the Conservative challenger. Again, that was not last election. They both had 21,000 and change in the last, just a few hundred votes separating those two people in the 2019 federal election. And that looks again to be a very close riding to keep an eye on. Vaughan Woodbridge, Thornhill, I didn't say Thornhill yet. Melissa Lastman is trying to hold Thornhill for the Conservative Party. In 2019, it was won by Conservative Peter Kent. Now, he's not running in this election, but Melissa Lastman is carrying the banner, and we see with 40 polls reporting there that she still has a moderate 200-vote lead on the Liberal challenger. I don't know why there's a check mark there, because he's not even in leading at all. So it's a really confusing check mark.
That's why we're trying to get those fixed.
Yeah, the Liberal candidate, he's a fundraiser, and he works a lot for a lot of nonprofits and charities going on there. So the last their York Region riding we want to look at is Vaughan Woodbridge. And that one comes up, that's currently held by the Liberal Party, Francesco Sorbera. And he is the incumbent and won that riding over his Conservative challenger last time. No, it was not Angela Panacci, it was a different challenger, Teresa Cruz. He won that last in 2019 by well over 7,000 votes. Yeah. And with 40, that's about a quarter of the polls reporting, he is starting to establish that lead. Yeah. So it looks like the overall in York Region, other than with the couple exceptions, the Vaughan and York Simcoe ridings of our own, that the Liberal grip on the 905 is seeming to hold. Right. And that so their strategy of focusing on the 905 to hold on to government seems to be panning out well for them in our region. When we come back, we'll take a look at some of our neighboring ridings, okay?
Perfect. That sounds great. Thank you, Dave. And we did take those numbers off the screen just so we could be able to fix those check marks and make sure that we have accurate info. The numbers are accurate. The polling is accurate so far. We just want to get rid of those check marks because it does get a little confusing for people.
I have a question for Dave.
Yeah.
Dave, where do you think the Green vote in York Simcoe is going to go?
That's a really interesting question, Karen, because I don't think we can say definitively or definitely one way or the other, because the Green vote is not necessarily comprising a body of people who are interested in the same social issues or economic issues or economic justice issues that would house people who are oriented more towards the New Democratic Party. There is a lot in the Green platform that's more closely aligned with the Conservative Party. When you look at the economic principles, privatization of costs, privatization of penalties for pollution, etc., there's a lot in alignment there. You've got to remember that the former leader, Elizabeth May, herself was advisor to former Conservative Prime Minister Brian Mulroney. So a lot of the build-up to the Green Party tradition comes from a conservative bent in economic analysis. I would, and then, however, though, the biggest issue facing on most Greens voter choice is the issue of catastrophic climate disruption, which is coming forward. Now, which party has the best platform to address that? Some of them would find their home in the Liberal Party for that. Very few would be able to be at home with the Conservative Party. But I would suspect the majority would then be drawn to the climate platform and the environmental platform of the New Democratic Party.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Dave. I have a question too. It's interesting, and Dave mentioned that, and I think it was Markham Stouffville having the very young candidate who is running, being 21. I haven't really seen too many candidates who are that young, but certainly we've heard really the idea of young people being able to take over votes in a lot of cases, being the voice, obviously, of the future, but gaining momentum with going in and checking off their own vote and making sure that they are at the polls and having their say in every election that we are doing moving forward. Are you finding that? Are you seeing a lot of younger people and their interest increasing?
I don't know. I'm hoping so. I mean, the ones that are engaged in this election and they are making an effort and going out and vote, it's encouraging for, you and I to know that, they are taking an interest in politics and the issues in this country. The issues right now, and you're talking, 19, 20, 21-year-olds?
Yeah.
Well, the major issues right now in the country, I don't know how affected they are by it, except most of them might still be in school. But affordability, being able to own a home, economic recovery, climate crisis. They're talking about, we're in a crisis with the climate now. That's the one issue that probably resonates most with them out of all of the issues that have been raised. I think that's the one that will resonate with them and probably get them engaged in the election and deciding to vote.
Yeah, I think it will be interesting to see those numbers because even though, we're talking 18, 19, 20 and first-time voters, we're also going to see 20-somethings, especially in this area, for things like affordability, for some of those issues as they become more prevalent. And I think it's only going to get worse, unfortunately, or debt and, those types of things. I think they have more of a voice than ever before.
I hope so. I have a lot of faith in our young people. And the more knowledgeable they are and the more engaged they are, then the more comfortable I'm going to feel, because I know that they're making informed decisions as they go to the polls, as opposed to just, who do I vote for, you know? Where they're going to go to the polls knowing exactly why they're voting and who they're going to vote for and why they're voting for that person.
Well, and I have said this for many years. I think, I mean, I've been with Rogers TV for 23 years and doing stuff on the air for 22. So I've been to a lot of elections, I've been through a lot of elections, and I would never have considered myself to be interested in politics. And what I've realized over the years is politics isn't just the legality of it and the overall structure of it at different levels of government. It also just means my neighborhood and what I go through in any given day in terms of healthcare and my roads and the businesses and wanting my town to flourish. And, you know, I've learned that over the years, that it's not just about the historical aspect and the structure of the political landscape, that really it is. And I think Mike Anderson was the one that said, you know, to be able to dumb it down for people, that is what it is. It's just dealing with how you get through life and the issues that are important and that matter to you.
Yeah, and you know, today people are on social media. They can get all of their news any which way.
Right or wrong.
Right or wrong, that's right. And I mean, that can be a little scary too, because, you know, who are the young people listening to? You know, what outlet are they taking their information on and making and basing decisions on? That can be a little scary, because a lot of misinformation is on these sites, on the social media, and you know, if that's what they're using to base their decisions on, that can be a little scary. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I have faith that you know, the leaders that are coming after are going to be doing the best for this country.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to believe that that's where we're headed.
Right. All right, we also have faith that numbers are going to continue to roll in for us. Not only are we waiting for those polling stations to submit their results, we're also making changes to that board so we can make sure that you have accurate and up-to-date information. But we're certainly hopeful that we will be getting some of that information really soon. This is the third federal election that we've gone through since the spring of 2019. It was the by-election took place in March of 2019.
Yep.
And that was after Peter Van Loan had retired. Our incumbent, Scott Davidson, was elected in that by-election. He was elected again in the fall of 2019 for the 43rd election. We are now tonight a part of the 44th. The biggest difference in all of these elections, obviously, is the pandemic and what we're going through. So we are seeing a lot of different issues that have come up, a lot of issues that are important to constituents that revolve around the pandemic, the vaccines, the policies that are existing.
Yeah, and you know, really, this is an election of crises. I used that word just a moment ago, but when you look at it, you know, where we are right now in the world, we've got a climate crisis.
Right.
We had the Afghanistan issue, and which was a crisis, a human crisis. And, you know, then the residential school issue. Then the pandemic, you know, which is a crisis. And it was almost every which way you looked for a while on the news, we were in a crisis. And you just kind of shake your head and go, how can we deal with all of these things at the same time as we're going through an election? That, you know, I found quite
Overwhelming?
Very much so. And couldn't believe that, we were dealing with all of this, and at the same time, we were going to go to the polls. So I was a little dumbfounded that, that decision was made. But, I mean, in fairness, the decision was made, I think, prior to a lot of these things happening. Although the pandemic, we were in the middle of that. They knew that Afghanistan seemed to creep up on them, although I think, they knew that that was coming. Certainly the residential school crises, was something that they were aware of. And of course, the climate crisis has been there. So I don't know if this was, the timing on this, I think, was bad.
Well, and above and beyond that, I know one of our debate questions when we had the debate was that we are incurring $1.5 billion a day in debt. Was that the number that 1.3, 1.5?
Yes, 1.3.
No, 1.5. Approximately $1.5 billion a day. The pandemic is costing us Canadians. Yeah. So, you're talking about significant crises that are taking place. And on top of that, the pandemic is costing that much daily.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, we can't wait to see the end of that one.
Right.
Yeah, and let's hope it's not going to be that far down the road, I hope.
Yes. All right. So let's head over to Dave and see what he has in terms of the leaders and their ridings. Dave, what do you got for us?
Okay. Well, I want the viewers to take a look at the bottom of the screen right now and take a look at where the overall totals are heading. Because especially if you look at the Liberal that's elected and leading in 151 ridings, CBC News has now declared a Liberal government, a Liberal victory.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Now, with that number too, and so many numbers waiting to come in from British Columbia, we are possibly toying with majority status. So it's still to be seen, but the declaration now is a Liberal victory for tonight. So let's take a look what happened to the leaders. If we go to Papineau first, that's the riding for Liberal leader Justin Trudeau. And he has been declared elected in his home riding of Papineau. With 1,500 votes, his nearest challenger, the from the NDP, Christine Paré, less than half of his score, he's been declared elected going ahead. If we move on to Beauce, he also in Quebec. That's the home riding for People's Party leader Maxime Bernier. And we see that he is trailing incumbent Conservative Richard Lehoux by a significant number, and the Conservative incumbent Richard Lehoux has been declared elected in that. So Maxime Bernier, leaders of the People's Party, has not won his own seat. Let's take a look at Toronto Centre as well. Toronto Centre, Marcy Ian is the incumbent there, although not declared elected. We see Annamie Paul, the leader of the Federal Green Party, down to less than 10%, well, around, let's say more than 10% of what the Liberal incumbent is scoring right now. So it's, although Marcy Ian, Liberal, has not been declared elected yet, is very poor chance we see of the Green Party leader being able to come back from her fourth place positioning right now. Let's hop over to Durham riding, one of our neighboring ridings, and the home riding of Conservative leader Erin O'Toole, and with a 25 polls reporting on that score there. He's got over 1,800 votes, more than twice as much as the Liberal challenger coming behind, and Erin O'Toole, leader of the Conservative Party, has been declared elected. And that's how the Jagmeet Singh, we only have one poll reporting from Burnaby South right now. Jagmeet Singh is leading that, but that's not enough to declare anything at this point in time. And Karen, you were talking about the youth vote, and it's a bigger question in this election coming that we run under too. one of the big concerns and complaints with youth enrolled in universities is that the polling stations in universities are closed. So a lot of the students that had gone back to on-campus, in-person learning, unless they were able to get home for the advanced polls, were denied voting rights because they wouldn't be registered in the local community. So there was a heavy problem, although we see a lot of interest among the youth in what's happening, especially when we begin to talk about the climate issues. Youth are very, very actively engaged in a lot of those. Yet there was a large amount of disenfranchisement of youth in this election. And that's something that's going to have to be addressed as a follow-up.
Well, I mean, we have mail-in ballots. And we had advanced polls, which, you know, they could have taken advantage of before they went back to school. I think there was an opportunity for them to still vote. I don't think they were denied, you know, that opportunity. Probably they didn't have the polling on election day that you and I had, but there was still an opportunity, I think, for them to cast a ballot.
Well, he would have had to go then to this device of using the mail-in ballots, because especially a lot of them, there were no advanced polls at the universities either. So
No, but they could have been home for the advance, because that was August 10th, I think.
Yeah. For some people that becomes a September. You mean September 10th, not August. So they were already down there. For some people coming back right away, may not have been an easy action to undertake, you know.
All right, well, we will keep checking the numbers. We will keep checking for our area. And of course, thank you, Dave, for the update. And we'll get back to you in a little bit.
Yeah, well, next time I come back, I want to look at some interesting ridings around us as well.
Okay, that sounds good. Yes, because there's certainly, you know, while we have some York Region ridings that we are paying attention to, there's also some surrounding ridings, including even north in Aurelia. That is the Simcoe North.
Simcoe North.
Yes, and so Cynthia
is Cuomo.
Yes, she was
she
Liberal.
ran the Liberal candidate here in the last election, and now she's running up there.
Yeah, so we have
she's doing well,
some of those
I think,
numbers.
isn't
Yeah,
she?
some of those numbers are interesting to take a look at because, you know, certainly around the lake, some of the issues become a little bit similar for those ridings, even though they aren't a part of the region.
And she's a Georgina Island First Nation member, and so yeah, I'd always be interested in how she's doing.
Yeah, our numbers are up on the screen. So we have 5. They always change as soon as you say that.
Maybe he'll bring them back for us.
We have 5 polling stations now releasing information.
There we
go. And so we see that incumbent Scott Davidson right now with those 5 polling stations is in the lead ahead of Liberal Daniela Johnson. So we await more information. It's interesting. We have 4 candidates this election. Back in 2019, we had several more.
I think we had 7, didn't we?
Yeah. So for the by-election, we had 6 that were a part of the election. Sorry, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 in the by-election. And then we had 6
in the election.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're missing a Green, and we're missing the.
Well, in the by-election, we had Progressive Canadian Party. We had the People's Party, Libertarian,
missing.
Green, National Citizens Alliance of Canada, and an independent as well. So that was in the by-election. And then in the general election in the fall of 2019, we had Green, Conservative, Libertarian, People's Party, New Democratic, and the Liberal Party of Canada.
Yeah, 2 of the candidates that we have running in this election were with us in 2019.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so interesting as we await the results. Of course, we've been talking about the riding, and the last time that York Simcoe was formed was 2004, and it has been a blue riding since
2004.
Since 2004. So it'll be interesting to see the results.
Yeah,
for
Karen
tonight.
Kraft Sloan, I think, was the last Liberal.
Yeah, and she
MP.
wasn't, and that was York North. She was as part of York North.
We were part of York
We
North.
were part
Yeah.
of York North,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
she was the MP of what was considered to be York
Yes,
North at the time.
exactly, yeah.
All right, stay tuned. There is still a lot more to come, obviously, with 5 polling stations now showing their results of 119. So we still have a long way to go, but we're hoping those numbers will come in fast and furious. We are going to take a few minutes for break. We will put those numbers back up on the screen for you, and we will continue to cover the results on election 2021, the local results. Stay tuned.
Yep, stay with us. We're not going anywhere yet.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the election 2021, the local results. I'm Jennifer Anderson from the Georgina Chamber of Commerce. I am the co-host for this evening, along with Karen Wolf, my co-host, and the host of Politically Speaking right here on Rogers TV. Georgina, we are... What are we in now, Karen? 11:30.
2 hours.
2 hours.
And did someone say at the beginning of this, oh, you're only going to be here for an hour? Like when we were talking about this show, you know, a couple of weeks ago, they said, oh, we'll have this wrapped up in an hour.
By
right?
11. By 11, we'll be out of here. And no such luck. We may have jinxed it. I'm not sure if it's on us, if it's on the polling stations, if it's on the crowds. I would be thrilled if we find out that the reason that we are here so long is because we have record numbers of voters.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah,
yes.
because this is something that we have wanted for a long time.
Well worth the wait. Well worth the wait, for sure.
Yes, absolutely. As promised to everyone at home, we have the candidates who are going to be zooming in and calling in over the course of this evening. Want to bring in Benjamin Jenkins is on the line. He is the candidate for the New Democratic Party. Benjamin, are you there with us?
I am.
Excellent.
Pleasure to meet you.
Thank you. Welcome to election night. How are you feeling?
Well, it's too early to say exactly. I mean, the NDP traditionally does well with people who would be requesting mail-in ballots, so we're probably not going to know exactly how well we've done until tomorrow morning, but I'm hopeful that we've improved on our performance from the previous election in 2019, and that we're going to keep on building momentum, doing better and better until finally we paint this riding orange.
Talk about the last 36 days, because it is a quick campaign. How did it feel quick for you? You had to accomplish a lot in a little bit of time.
Quick it's one of those things where it feels simultaneously too fast and too slow, where it feels like it's going to take forever until suddenly it's election day. So yeah, it started out incredibly stressful. I've probably only gotten maybe 5 hours sleep a night if I'm lucky the past I don't know how many days, but it's at the same time, as we've been getting out, doing our masked, socially distanced, outdoors canvassing, door knocking, meeting people, that has been very energizing. That has been honestly the best part of the campaign, meeting people, hearing what they have to say, hearing the issues that are important to them. That's what's kept me going, and that's what's really given me the strength to get through all
And actually, that's what I wanted to ask you, Benjamin. You know, what were you hearing at the door when you were campaigning?
Well, I mean, everyone has their own story, but there are certain themes that definitely emerged. A lot of people very worried about affordable housing, especially younger people in my generation, people younger than me. A lot of people worried about climate change, worried about their future, worried about whether they're going to have a job in the next 6 months. A lot of worries and concerns. A lot of the people I met who were actually, we were the first campaign to even get out to them. And yeah, there's certain repeating themes, but I think everyone has their worries and anxieties, and I think it's been good to reach people and let them know that they're not alone in the way they feel, and that there are people who are trying to bring them real solutions.
Mm-hmm. Anything that surprised you at all?
Define surprised in terms of what people said or things that I saw. Anything?
Just generally, you know, as you were talking to people on a daily basis and you walked away and felt, you know, really, is that really what they were feeling? Or I just wondering if there was anything that surprised you on the campaign trail. Now, this was your first campaign,
Yes.
So obviously it sounds like things went the way you were expecting them to go then.
I would say so. I mean, we're the NDP. We're the party of the common person. We're the party of the average person in Canada, and every concern that we hear, it's one that a lot of us share. I mean, I heard a lot of people talking about rent. I'm a renter myself. I know how that feels. It's something that we generally have had a bit of a feeling for what people's worries and concerns are. And as we've gone out, we found that, we're not alone in that. A lot of people worried about housing, a lot of people worried about being able to afford food going forward, about what their jobs are going to look like in the future, about some people are talking about immigration and making sure that their relatives can come to them. A lot of people very worried about pharmacare. That was something that was on a lot of people's minds, is pharmacare. That's something a lot of people have been very eager for. And certainly I have learned a lot about elderly people in our riding, people living with disabilities have been very eager for our transportation platform. Because of course with COVID, if you can't drive, I mean, we have a very rural riding to begin with. Our transportation infrastructure needs desperate upgrading and improvement. But a lot of people who are living being unable to drive or use a car, they've been very eager to hear about that as well.
Benjamin, we thank you so much, not only for running and being so interested and passionate about this community, but we also thank you for being here tonight. Congratulations on a great campaign. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Lots of excitement as we continue to have the numbers come in. 16 of 119 so far, so we are waiting those results. We are starting to get numbers in. We're starting to see a little bit of a separation in some of those numbers. But I think, as we've talked to a few people tonight, it's somewhat expected in how we're seeing those numbers. Still very, very early in the evening, though. But interesting to see those numbers. We still have Dave, who is in the green room with us. He will be updating us on some of the numbers that are coming in around York region, surrounding our riding. And of course, we have numbers right across the country from ridings of interest as well as the leaders' ridings. So we await, we talk, we stretch, and we talk to each of the candidates. I believe we are going to be heading over to Scott Davidson and his campaign headquarters for the evening. So we are going to be talking to him. We're also going to talk to some of the other candidates who are the other two candidates. Daniela, our Liberal candidate, as well as Michael Lauder is going to be joining us later this evening. So interesting when we were looking at numbers and thinking that things would be wrapped up. But, as we said a little while ago, hopefully we see numbers that we have never seen before.
Yes.
Not just in York Simcoe, but across the country. We want to see people voting. We want to see them exercising their right to vote.
Yeah, and I mean, Benjamin brought up a good point, when he said a lot of people have mail-in ballots and advance polls, and with the mail-in ballots, they aren't going to start counting those until tomorrow. So, basically, like he said, I'm not going to know how well we did until they get counted. So
yeah. But interesting. It's interesting to hear, and regardless of the results, the fact that people put their names in, that they participate in this process, and they really have an active and strong interest in our community and making it a better place. I have nothing but praise for all of the candidates who throw their hat in the ring.
That's hard work, to get across this riding.
All right, we are going to head over to Scott's headquarters now and listen to what he has to say to those who are at the Legion with him.
How you doing, everyone?
Hi, Scott. How are you?
Thanks, everyone, for being here. Who's left? I know I got lots of volunteers out in the field. We had some late night polling issues, and I think Keswick just the last voter voted there about 15 minutes ago. So there's going to be some. It's still going to be a late night tonight, but we're really excited. We just got a check mark from CTV News, and we're all excited, right? There we go. Third time I've been here in 2.5 years, and I can tell you I'm honored and humbled. as ever tonight. And it's almost like Groundhog Day. Let me tell you, 3 elections in a little over 2 years. And it's such a privilege to represent York Simcoe as your member of parliament. And I'm so grateful to have earned the trust of residents, our community once more. I owe an immense gratitude to my wife, Suzanne, to thank you so much, sweetie, for putting up with this. And to my son, Graydon, thanks so much. I really appreciate it, and you make me proud every day. And I'm also grateful tonight to my campaign manager that has been stressed out all night, waiting for polls. The guy's a mess tonight. But Patrick Speck, thanks so much for running the campaign for me. You did a great job, and thanks so much. And I want to thank all volunteers that helped tonight and throughout the campaign, raising money, putting up signs. This whole campaign couldn't happen without volunteers. And I want to thank everyone for getting our positive message out to everyone across York Simcoe. I want to thank Michael and Alex. I know none of my volunteers are here right now. They're at the polling stations. Carol, Jennifer, Doug, Marky, Atel, Fred, Rick, Sterling, Angela, Markan, Pat, Jim, Quentin, Peter, Jody, and everyone else who helped out on the campaign. I could not have done it without you again. And I'm deeply grateful to every single person who contributed their time. And I've always said that even in darkness, even in times of struggle or difficulty, we can always see promise and hope for a brighter future. And I always see possibility whenever I travel around York Simcoe. And I've even seen this over the course of the campaign. I've seen small business owners giving back, charities going above and beyond to help out the community that we're all a part of. So many examples of selflessness, grit, and determination. That is what York Simcoe is always about. I've always championed that. We all roll up our sleeves to help each other in York Simcoe. My commitment to community has never wavered. I will continue to work hard every day to represent every single person that lives here, no matter how they cast their ballot tonight in this election. And that is very important to me. Having been born and raised here, I can tell you that each resident of York Simcoe is my family, and I will always fight and stand up for my family. Unfortunately, over the past 36 days, Justin Trudeau was focused on dividing Canadians and driving wedges between people. And as a result, far too many Canadians have lost their trust in government. As Member of Parliament for York Simcoe, I will do my part to heal those divisions and work towards restoring the trust and confidence in our institutions once again. Our country and our community is faced with serious issues that the federal government urgently needs to address. This pandemic is still raging on. The cost of living continues to increase. Housing is unaffordable, and small businesses are still struggling. At the same time, we need urgent action to protect our environment, ensure meaningful reconciliation with First Nations, address the critical infrastructure needs, and reestablish Canada on the world stage. Alongside my Conservative colleagues in the House of Commons, I will focus relentlessly on addressing these critical issues and work towards getting our country back on track. Now it's getting late. We're going to go past midnight tonight. So let me say one last time to everyone here, thank you so much to being able to represent this great community of York Simcoe once again. I will continue to stand up for the great people of Georgina, East Gwillimbury, Bradford, West Gwillimbury, Chippewas of Georgina Island. And again, thank you so much to the voters of York Simcoe tonight. Thank you. For allowing us to be here tonight. Peter, I know it's
There you have it. We were listening to Scott's speech that was at his headquarters at the Sutton Legion. He was speaking to those who were in attendance there. We're not really sure in terms of who was there or numbers. Certainly not what we're used to seeing for headquarters for areas where candidates are. So it it'll be interesting to see how those numbers continue to unfold. We are continuing to bring you numbers. Only 16 polls have been reported in York Simcoe so far of the 119. So 17, just as I'm talking there, so we're up to 17. So we have a little ways to go before anything is unofficially or officially declared in terms of the different areas that are across this area, across the country. A few different ridings have officially been declared, like Trudeau's riding. Certainly some of those we're starting to see.
And more than just ridings. I mean, we've got City TV and CBC declaring,
yes,
you know, a Liberal government.
Minority. Yeah.
Yep.
So we are starting to see those numbers, and as you look at some of the ridings in and around York Region, the last one, 55 of the polls have been announced, where this one in King Vaughan, just 16 of 145. So certainly a difference in areas, but what we are seeing as the common thread is polling stations have been busy. They're, as you said, not as many this time around. And so you have more people at any given polling station. You have a lot of social distance.
And long lineups.
Yes,
and
taking
obviously
place.
It's taking a long time to get them through. I mean, they might have lined up at 9:30, but by the time they get through, it's 10:30. So
yeah. I think we are going to be talking to Michael Lauder. He is the candidate for the People's Party of Canada. We're waiting to get him on the line so we can ask him a few questions about his campaign, and we will continue to find out what is happening in our riding and right across the country. So certainly we saw with our debate some of the topics, and they've been infused in some of the conversations that we've had with some of our guests tonight. The topics that are important to people this campaign. We asked when we did the debate, because we couldn't do something live this year, for obvious reasons. We had people submit online, and they were submitting questions. Big one, vaccinations and policies, climate change, affordability, healthcare, economic recovery. So very, very interesting to see what is not only in the hearts and on the minds of York Simcoe constituents, but I think that's pretty safe to say that those were concerns right across the country.
Absolutely. Yep, no question.
Yeah. So, and you know what? A lot of those issues tie back to the pandemic.
Sure. I mean, economic recovery, we don't hear that unless there is something like a pandemic, right?
Right.
It would be the economy. The climate change would have been on the agenda, but this is more of a climate crisis that people are concerned about today. Yeah, so there's a lot of issues that, well, certainly the vaccine issue would not have been an issue any other time. So, yeah. It's different. It's totally different this time.
And that is definitely a great question for Michael, who ran in the 2019 general election, right?
What does he see as the difference?
So there was a big difference between these elections and between any other election and this one. That was a huge difference, and it's a huge issue that they have faced not only on the campaign trail, but hearing people and their concerns and what the issues are in this community.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Are you seeing any surprises so far? Are you surprised by what City TV is calling?
I'm surprised that it's this early.
Yes.
Because again, you know, they have the mail-in ballots, which apparently the numbers there are greater than they've ever been before. They have to be counted, and they're not going to do that until tomorrow. The Liberals have 156. 124 have been declared, 32 in leading, so we're looking at 156, and we're moving into the West, and we know that, that's PC country.
Right.
So I am surprised that they've called it as early as they have. I don't know that they're wrong, certainly. I'm not going to say that. But I would have let it go a little bit longer, I think, before I made that declaration.
Let's head to Zoom. We do have Michael Lauder waiting on the line with us. Hi, Michael.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Thank you so much for joining us. Congratulations on election night. 36 days. How have your 36 days been?
You know, it's running a campaign is stressful to begin with, and then you put it into 36 days and you run even harder. You know, like Benjamin had mentioned, 5 hours sleep a night is a lot. It's like I said, it's a stressful situation. It's emotionally challenging. It's physically draining. And this evening, I actually decided to spend the time with my kids at home instead of doing something outside of home. They've been 36 days with putting up with me on the phone and emails and texting and in the car. And, so I thought I'd treat them to some dad time tonight.
Yeah. So, Michael, this is your second election in York Simcoe. Just wondering, when you were door knocking, how different was it this time compared to last time?
The reception was a lot more open this time. The campaign last time I was kind of put in at the end. The reception was amazing, actually. People in York Simcoe are some of the best people you'll meet. Even though you have a different political stripe, they'll still talk to you, most of them. In 2019, I had very few volunteers. This time I had so many people step up and help out and put up some signs and hang door knockers and things like that. So it was a very different feel that way. Still stressful, but it was a different feel.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What were you hearing as you were talking to constituents? What were the major issues? And I know Karen and I were just talking about the things and the issues that we received questions for you for the debate. Was that what you were hearing from people? Things like climate change and COVID and vaccinations and affordability? Are those the things that were top of mind as you were talking to people?
Yeah, first thing I would hear was with regards to COVID. Then it was economic recovery, and then healthcare was the next one that I heard. And along healthcare, I'd say probably equally was affordability of life, really. The cost of living has skyrocketed over the last little while, and people are struggling. And you can see it in people. People are stressed. Going forward, we need to be able to rectify that situation of how do you make the dollar last longer. People aren't working. Some people have lost their jobs, and people are now afraid of losing their jobs with the incoming mandates that they see coming. So, a lot of people are feeling the stress. A lot of people are feeling the pinch. But yeah, COVID was probably the number one that I got.
Now, of the people that you spoke to at the door and the ones that said, yes, you know what, you've got my vote, what do you think, what part of your platform do you think was appealing to them?
I would have to say, in that case, the COVID mandates, the vaccine mandates and the vaccine passport, the personal freedom to be able to make that choice as to what you inject into your body. That was a big thing for a lot of people. And then followed by the economy. How are you going to fix it? What are we going to do? If you look at our economy part of the platform, we want to open the economy up so that we can have our jobs back, so that people can work, so we can bring in paychecks, and we can rebuild the base of the economy.
Yes, exactly. I mean, a lot of people are really concerned at this point how we're going to do that. And, we're in a bit of trouble, I think.
What are we at? 1.3 trillion in debt on a 2 trillion and change, GDP. It's a big number. Like, I don't think I have enough ink and a pen to write that number down. Like, it's huge. And when people realize that it's costing $484 million a day, they get stressed out. They're like, where's that money coming from? you're taking it out of my pocket, but I'm not seeing it being paid down. And one of the things I got was, why do we pay taxes if it's not enough to do what we're doing? Do we have to pay more tax? I think it's got to do with how are we spending the money, not with where are we getting the money from. If we're spending it in the wrong places, then we're gonna run into a lot of trouble doing that.
Absolutely.
Michael, thank you so much for not only being here with us tonight, but I know you mentioned being at home with your daughters tonight, and certainly being a part of a campaign and being a part of politics takes you away a lot, and so we appreciate how much work and effort that you've put into our community.
No, thank you guys for putting this together, and I'd just like to, if I can, really quickly thank Scott and Benjamin and Daniela for putting their names in. I know it takes a lot out of people to do it, and hats off to you guys for standing up.
Well, thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You as well. You as well. Take care. So we have, I'm always amazed at the amount of time and effort and energy that goes into a campaign. So regardless of any outcome, I think there's a lot of success in the campaigns and in running and just being passionate about this community.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've got to take your hat off to anyone who makes the decision to get into politics and put that work into it, because it is a lot of work.
Yeah.
And after you win, it's a lot of work.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's head over to Dave now. We want to find out some of the numbers that are coming in. And as we wait for those York Simcoe numbers, there are ridings right across the country. How many? 338 ridings, I think, right across the country. They are equally waiting, anxiously awaiting for results. And Dave has some of those numbers. So take it away, Dave.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jen.
Dave's got everything.
What you were talking about, earlier, Karen, that wondering about the early prediction there, but a lot of the ridings in the West have already been declared, and as unsurprisingly, most of Saskatchewan and Alberta were declared for the Conservative Party. So those numbers have been included. And what we're seeing in our scrolling across the bottom of the screen there is all the ridings across the country now accounted for. It gives a bit of an interesting perspective on the election if you compare the leading and the elected to what was the composition of the Parliament before dissolution.
Yeah.
The Liberals there, we see a loss of 1 seat. The Conservatives, we see a gain of 2 seats. NDP, a gain of 4 seats. The Bloc, a loss of 3. The Green, a loss of 1. So there's really not that much difference in this coming Parliament from the Parliament that we left. So let's take a look at what's happening in a couple of the interesting ridings. You had mentioned Simcoe North before. Simcoe North, just at the north end of Lake Simcoe and Lake Couchiching up there. The Liberal candidate was formerly ran in York Simcoe, Cynthia Wesley Esquimo. And you see that she's trailing the Conservative incumbent, Alan Chambers, who has been declared elected now. In Pickering-Uxbridge, bordering us on the east, we have an incumbent Liberal, Jennifer O'Connell, and she's not declared elected, but she's leading the closest rival there, Jacob Mantle of the Conservative Party, by 900 votes. An interesting riding I think we should take a look at is Kitchener Centre. It was called when the election, we went to the polls, too close to call between the 3 parties. The Conservative, the NDP, and the Green were all sitting at 25% popularity. And we're seeing now with Kitchener Centre, if you got up there, the Green seems to be taking the lead by a very, very small margin there There we go. Oops, the mark just changed as I'm talking. The Greens moved up and now has been declared elected. And that gives the Greens 2 seats overall in the country. Of course, Elizabeth May in Saanich and the Islands is already declared elected and won her seat. But the other Green member from Nanaimo Ladysmith, Paul Manley, formerly held the seat as an NDP candidate, running as a Green as an incumbent, has lost the seat to the NDP. It seems. He's not declared yet. Anyway, that gives us a bit of an update on what's been going on around our neighborhood.
Very good. Thank you so much, Dave. It's been difficult to really kind of break down those numbers and understand them when things are coming in slowly in some areas, and then we're starting to see a little bit of a change in the results. I think some people we've talked to have been surprised by City TV's declaration of a minority government, especially so early in the evening. But we are finally starting to see those numbers roll in. We are waiting for Scott to come back on. We did have a speech that he made at his headquarters tonight at the Sutton Legion. We are waiting to get him directly to be able to talk to us a little bit about his campaign and his thoughts moving forward. So, still lots of information that's coming in. We hope you're sticking around with us. 119 polls are in York Simcoe, and we anxiously await more results as they come in.
I'm a little envious of Simcoe North. Did you see they had something like 200 and some polls reporting out of 200 and some?
No, I'm choosing to ignore that.
I looked at that and went, what did they do right?
I don't know, and it'll be interesting to see what the answer is for some of those delays. We've seen, you and I have been a part of enough campaigns and election night coverage to know that it never goes the way that it's supposed to go.
No, we had this all planned out.
Yeah, and it's not, sometimes it's just polling stations and things that are happening in that regard. We've seen, electric ballots. Is that what they're called? Electronic ballots versus, handwritten, and the delays in handwritten, the mail-in ballots. I mean,
And bomb threats.
And bomb threats. Who knew? So there is a lot of information that's coming in. We are thankful that you are sticking with us. We are thankful that Dave is also being able to provide us updates. And Dave, you have something that you want to add.
Oh, just Karen asked an interesting question earlier on the show tonight about what's going to happen to the Green vote in York Simcoe. And I said it's not an easy answer. It's not going to be, we can't predict a direct shift to any one party. And it's interesting, if we take a look at the 8.6% that the Greens did poll in the 2019 federal election, we see that the Conservative, Scott Davidson, has increased by 2%. The Liberals have increased by 2%. The New Democrats have increased by about 2%.
Would some of that be the Libertarian then?
Well, the Libertarian was a smaller percentage, but I think more likely what you're seeing is it wasn't directed to one other party in particular, but as I suggested, people found their ground in other aspects of party platforms. So I think it fairly much spread out.
Is it what you expected tonight, Dave?
In terms of...
Just in terms of everything, in terms of delays, in terms of minority, liberal, just what are you seeing, and is that something that you were expecting, or any surprises that you have?
I have to admit, I did predict a Liberal minority. I had said that I don't think this Parliament is going to have much different composition than the previous Parliament did, and I think that's kind of what we're seeing. I am surprised, though, and Karen and I were speaking about this earlier, to see the Bloc actually lose seats, because after the French debate and the English debates, it just seemed that the Bloc leader had gained an awful lot of traction within the province, and so that the Liberal goal of getting its majority based upon Quebec and the 905 in Ontario was frustrated by that position. I had thought that the Bloc was going to actually hold or increase its number of seats in Quebec. Instead, we've seen a decrease in it, and that was picked up by the other parties again. So that would be a surprise I had. I had predicted that we would see, because of all the problems the Green Party has had with their own internal organization and their inability to support any candidates outside of the leaders. I thought we were going to see a wipeout except for Elizabeth May, but we see Kitchener being able to pick one up. So that was a couple of things I had written down in my little predictive notes that were not correct.
And what about Maxime Bernier and the People's Party of Canada, Dave?
Well, you know what? I think that's another one there too, Karen. I think that's really interesting because I had thought, especially because of the way Maxime Bernier had picked up on the trying to make the vaccine issue and the mask issue a populist issue, and he was trying to lay claim to that territory and invite people to support himself and the People's Party around that issue in particular. They have not particularly jumped forward with any kind of huge progress. I think we're looking at what right now 5% of the popular vote has gone to the People's Party. Has that made a significant impact on any riding? I'm looking across them. I had thought it was going to weaken the Conservative candidates in a number of ridings, and that doesn't seem to be the case. The People's Party, if Maxime Bernier had intended on playing the spoiler in this election, I don't think that has materialized.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I would definitely agree with you. Now, I see that we do have, they have called the York Simcoe riding.
Yes.
And Scott Davidson is the winner.
Yes, so we have the unofficial calling, but we do have the check mark, which is letting us know that they have called Scott Davidson. We are waiting to talk to him. We are hoping that we will get him in the next few minutes. What we're going to do, just take a short break. We're going to put those numbers up on the screen for you as we get him on the phone, and we will be back with Scott Davidson.
Yes. Well, must be exciting.
right, thank you so much. We're in it for the long haul. We are glad that you are too, that you are joining us for election 2021, the local results. The local results are coming in, albeit quite slow, but we have 30 of 119 polling stations issuing their results, and we already have that unofficial, but the victory is going to our incumbent, York Simcoe MP Scott Davidson. So this is what we are hearing. He is on the line. We heard his speech to his headquarters, and now we get to talk to him. Hi, Scott.
Hi, Jennifer. How are you doing tonight?
Good. You sound excited.
We are really excited. What can I tell you? And we're in it for the long haul, too, Jennifer.
Yeah.
Well, listen, congratulations,
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Oh, well, thanks. Hi, Karen. How are you tonight? Thanks very
Fine.
much.
No, we're doing great here, and we're expecting that you're going to be celebrating until the wee hours of the evening, I'm sure.
Well, we are, and you know what? We're still waiting on more results, as you know. Things were a little slow here in York Simcoe tonight, but that's okay.
Yeah. Were you expecting this much of a delay?
No, I wasn't expecting this much of a delay, but, you know, it shows we haven't seen voter turnout, obviously, because we haven't seen, you know, the total numbers reporting yet, but it's great to see everyone was out voting tonight. That's what we want to see.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there were long lineup.
So you have become a little bit of an expert in being a part of campaigns. Maybe, you know, one of the most number of days campaigning in the shortest amount of time, with 3 different elections in the last 2.5 years. How has this one been different, albeit in the middle of a pandemic, but how has this one been different for you?
Well, no, thanks for the question. You know, again, I'm honored and grateful tonight to the voters of York Simcoe to represent them. And, you know, 3 elections, you're right, in a little over 2 years. I guess I'll say I know where the dog legs are for those that play golf. And, you know, this election was, I would say, difficult in the sense it was a very short campaign. The shortest in Canadian history being 36 days. So, as you know, this is a big riding all the way from basically Schaumburg to Port Bolster. So getting out to see everyone in that short period of time was difficult. You know, you couldn't have any large sort of gatherings and, you know, I'll call them mini rallies like I like to have. So I think, you know, that was more difficult. It was also difficult getting a number of volunteers. Jennifer, just, you know, COVID, people are a little bit shy, you know, volunteers going out to the door. So you had to work hard yourself and get out and see as many people as you could.
Yeah.
And what are you expecting at the end of the evening, Scott? Once all the votes are in, are you expecting to make some gains in terms of the votes that you're going to get this time over the last time?
You know what, I'd really hope for that, Karen. You know, I worked, you know, extremely hard the last 2 years for everyone in York Simcoe, and I hope that hard work gets rewarded and, you know, that I can see, you know, a little bit jump in the percentage. That's what I'm hoping for tonight. Again, I don't have anything in front of me right now. I don't know how many polls are reporting and what the vote count is right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What about the you know, knocking on doors and the people you were talking to? What were you finding was the number one issue on the minds of York Simcoe residents, Scott?
Well, the number one issue, Karen, was, you know, people were frustrated that we were having this election, number one. I think they felt it was a power grab. And, you know, when I briefly looked at the results, and I again, they're not in front of me now, I think it shows, you know, $610 million later, we're basically where we were 23 months ago. So that was, you know, one concern. Affordability was another concern that I heard a lot at the doors. Healthcare was, you know, people here in York Simcoe are still concerned, you know, about having a doctor. They're concerned about healthcare investments here. You know, before I had a lot of people tell me, pharmacare, dental care is important, Karen, but a lot of people said, gee, Scott, I'd love to have a doctor before that, before we spend $26 billion on that. So, there was a lot of issues as well, obviously, with the environment. People were disappointed about my private member's bill that didn't become law. It was an hour out from becoming law, and it didn't, as well as the Lake Simcoe Cleanup Fund. And, obviously, I represent the Holland Marsh here. That's 80% of the fresh produce that's grown across Ontario that feeds Ontario. And, our farmers were concerned about food security. They were looking for a PACA deemed trust that should have been in the free trade agreement that I tried to champion for that. That was a big concern with farmers in Bradford. So, there's a number of concerns. Obviously, Georgina Island, I represent Chippewa's Georgina Island. There's still concerns over there that they get enough funding to get them off a boiled water advisory. So it depended on where you were in the riding. There was certain issues. Illegal grow ops, throughout, I would say, East Gwillimbury are a real concern. So there's a number of different issues that you heard when you're at the doors.
Well, there you are. You're back in Ottawa. You can now tackle all of those issues and get to work.
You know what, Karen? I always say small things add up to big things. Take one impossible task at a time, get a list, and get her going.
Yeah.
Get her going. I think it's unrealistic to assume that you are going to rest, just knowing you, that you're going to take a couple of much-needed days, but I assume you are going to hit the ground running.
Oh, I'll be hitting the ground running. In fact, I'll be up early tomorrow morning before it rains and be out there with my sign crew, picking up signs and looking forward to getting back to work here right away.
With a smile on your face.
Always. You got to keep it fun, keep smiling, and push forward.
Yes. Thank you so much for being a part of the show today. We love that we could listen in, be a fly on the wall, and listen into your speech, and we're thankful that you called in to speak to us tonight.
And again, congratulations.
Yes, congrats.
And thank you.
No, thanks so much, and I'm grateful to Rogers TV, and thank you to you, Karen, and Jennifer for local TV. That's very important. And again, thanks very much to the voters of York Simcoe again tonight.
Amazing. Have a great night. Have a great morning.
Thanks.
We're now into the morning.
Yeah, I guess I could have started the show. Good morning.
That's right.
That's right.
You certainly could have.
There you go.
Have a good night.
See you later.
All right. Well, there you have it.
There, yes. And I mean, all of that for 36 days, and where are we? We've got the same MP we had before. We've got the same government we had before. And there we go.
Yeah, so a little bit surprising because the numbers came in a lot slower than we were expecting. Yep. A little bit surprising that it's been called with only 35 of 119 polling stations. So we will have to await those numbers to see just how many York Simcoe constituents went to the polls this time around.
I'm going to be interested to see if Scott Davidson's numbers actually went up. Because like he said, he's put a lot of work into the riding, and he's hoping to see, some benefit from that in terms of numbers. So it'll be interesting to see.
Although Karen and I are signing off and ending our election results and the coverage tonight, we will continue to scroll those numbers so you can check in and see as more polls become available and the results become available. Thank you for being a part of.
Well, thank you. I've enjoyed it.
Yes,
very much, and I hope that our viewers that have tuned in have been interested in this election and interested in how it's turned out.
All right. On behalf of everyone here at Rogers TV Georgina, the Georgina Chamber of Commerce, and all of the crew, limited crew that was here tonight, and on behalf of Karen and Dave,
yes,
thank you for being a part of the show. Thank you for creating some strong content for us to relay to constituents in York Simcoe. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you at the next election. Have a good night. Morning.